harbor still slept when Maya Rodriguez wiped grease from her hands and stared across rows of dying ships, their rusted hulls whispering stories no one wanted to hear anymore. At 32, she had learned to survive on noise, smoke, and stubborn will, waking before dawn so her 7-year-old daughter could eat before school and believe, at least for a few hours, that the world was kind. The call came the way fate often arrives, uninvited and unbelievable. An estate attorney, a relative she had never heard of, and a single asset so absurd it made her laugh out loud at first. A rotting casino ship left behind by a vanished great-uncle. Debt clung to it like barnacles. $47,000 in fees, back taxes, and decay. Logic told her to hang up. But curiosity, that old familiar hunger that had pulled her into engine rooms and broken machines, tightened its grip. 2 days later, standing on the pier with Isabella's small hand trembling inside hers, Maya stared up at the Lady Fortuna as if it were a ghost dredged from the deep. Paint peeled like dead skin. Windows gaped like blind eyes. Still, somewhere beneath that ruin, something waited. She felt it, not luck, not superstition, but the quiet pressure of a door that had never quite closed. Her breath caught as the warped gangplank groaned under her weight, and the ship answered with a hollow metallic sigh of warning. Inside, the ship breathed differently. Dust lifted in pale clouds with each step Maya took across carpet once woven with luxury and lies. Slot machines stood frozen mid-promise, poker tables abandoned in the posture of the last losing hand. It felt as though time itself had been interrupted mid-sentence. She moved upward through rotten stairs and velvet-lined rooms until she reached the steel door no one had bothered to disguise. It resisted briefly, then surrendered with a heavy click. Cold air spilled upward from the darkness below, carrying the smell of paper, metal, and secrets sealed too long. Every warning instinct told her to step back, to return to sunlight and innocence, to pretend the dead stayed dead. But the deeper instinct, the one that had kept food on her table and fire in her bones, pulled her forward. Down 3 levels she descended until she found the room that defied decay. Ledgers lined the walls with surgical precision. At the center, a letter addressed to her in shaky ink. As she read her uncle's confession of a vanished life, a hidden fortune, and a gift meant only for her, Maya felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. The words did not promise safety. They promised truth. Blueprints revealed secret compartments built into the bones of the ship itself. This wasn't abandonment. This was architecture of survival, and she stood inside it trembling with purpose as the steel door whispered shut behind her fate. The first compartment opened with the shriek of tortured metal and the soft surrender of a combination lock. Inside lay history sealed in plastic, rare Cuban casino chips, untouched by time, worth more than her entire lifetime of labor. The triumph lasted exactly 1 breath. Her phone vibrated with a single message. "We know you boarded the ship." Fear moved faster than thought. By the time armed men confronted her days later on the rotting casino floor, the truth was already clear. She hadn't inherited freedom, she had inherited attention. Marcus Villa spoke for ghosts that still collected debts, men who did not believe time forgave anything. He offered deals disguised as mercy and threats disguised as civility. When they spoke her daughter's name, the world narrowed to a single violent point inside Maya's chest. They gave her 72 hours. 72 hours to inventory a fortune built from secrets and blood. 72 hours before the polite conversation ended. When they left, Maya collapsed among the dust and broken chandeliers, shaking with anger and terror in equal measure. Yet even then, on her knees in the ruins, she did not break. Every broken machine she had ever fixed had taught her the same lesson. Nothing is beyond repair if you refuse to quit. Her heartbeat steadied as the fire inside her chose defiance over despair, and the ship seemed to listen as she stood again against the weight of impossible odds and claimed her will. She worked like a woman racing a storm. Behind false walls and hidden panels she found gold coins, pre-war currency, vintage gaming machines worth fortunes in private circles. Each discovery widened the gravity of what she now carried. When she reached the final chamber, buried deep near the waterline, dozens of safety deposit boxes stared back at her like silent witnesses. Another letter waited there. Her uncle's final confession spoke not only of value, but of guilt, of courage delayed too long, and of a fortune worth more than $200 million. He urged her to bring everything into the open, to fight in daylight instead of hiding in shadows as he had done. As she climbed back into the light, water crept higher into the hull. The ship was sinking. Time, money, danger, everything collapsed into a single brutal equation. By the next morning, the world knew, auction houses called, reporters chased. Lawyers knocked, and with exposure came retaliation. The ledgers proving ownership vanished in a break-in executed with brutal precision. Red paint bled across her ship's wall, 60 hours. Continue fighting or start bleeding. The threat was no longer theoretical. It was operational, ticking louder than machinery as floods climbed, and enemies learned how close she stood to losing everything she had not yet dared to name as hope under a burning sky that offered neither mercy nor delay for the woman who refused to surrender to fear. With documentation stolen and enemies multiplying, Maya learned the full weight of power, how quickly it draws predators, how effortlessly it rewrites strangers into claimants. Lawsuits landed like arrows. Men who had never spoken her name now demanded history rewrite itself in their favor. And behind all the paper warfare lurked Marcus Vila, watching the clock. Security guards flanked her now. Police cruised past her apartment. Still she slept lightly, listening for footsteps, for the wrong engine slowing in the street. Desperate to save what could be saved, she moved to extract the final treasure as water rose in the hull. Every descent into the ship became a race against flooding darkness. Each step into the engine room felt like walking into a closing grave. Yet she kept going, wet boots, shaking hands, unblinking will. She documented gems, coins, rare artifacts, leaving each item untouched but counted, as if naming them into safety. When auction specialists confirmed the full valuation, over $300 million, there was no joy in the number, only pressure. Money that large doesn't reward. It distorts. It destabilizes. It dares people to become something they were never meant to be. Maya felt the squeeze of that transformation and chose restraint over spectacle, resolve over panic, and truth over the quiet lie of surrender, while the unseen eyes of danger followed every breath she took beneath the echo of sinking steel and tightening time that spared no one mercy tonight. The confrontation came not with shouting, but with silence. On the 61st hour, the Lady Fortuna burned. Fire climbed her decks like a prayer in reverse, consuming rust, memory, and any illusion that this war would remain legal. Maya arrived as smoke choked the harbor sky. Firefighters fought the inferno while police hunted shadows no one could prove existed. The ship that had carried fortune and fear collapsed into the water with a sound that felt like grief. Most of the lower decks were lost. What she had managed to catalog and remove remained under armed seal in climate-controlled vaults downtown. Vila vanished. No arrest, no charges, just absence. The lawsuits continued, slower now, weaker, as proof slowly rebuilt itself from backups and fragments of memory. Months passed in courtrooms and conference rooms while Maya lived suspended between ordinary motherhood and extraordinary consequence. Isabella still did homework at the kitchen table. Maya still packed lunches, but everything else moved through glass. The world watched without understanding the cost of standing in the open, while the ashes of legacy settled into salt, an air around a family learning how to breathe again beneath the quiet after catastrophe, when survival no longer felt like victory, but obligation carried forward through smoke and unanswered questions that waited patiently for daylight, and a reckoning no fortune could postpone for long when truth had already escaped the flames that could not consume what courage had claimed. In the end, the law did what fear never could. It measured, verified, and ruled. The majority of claims collapsed under scrutiny. Legitimate ownership was confirmed for the greater part of the collection. Museums acquired history. Private collectors competed in hushed rooms for fragments of a vanished world. Funds were placed in trusts. Protections multiplied. Maya did not become reckless. She paid her debts first. Then she built quietly, a home that did not shake when buses passed, schools where teachers had time to notice, a workshop where old machines lived again. She never chased a lifestyle that required forgetting who she had been. The fortune changed her circumstances, not her code. Some nights she still woke to the smell of oil and water, to the echo of footsteps across a rotting casino floor. But in daylight, she watched her daughter grow in safety she had earned inch by inch. The future did not arrive with fanfare. It came with steady breath, measured trust, and the long, patient work of turning survival into structure strong enough to carry memory, without letting it rule the shape of tomorrow, while shadows of threat finally learned the limits of her reach, and the quiet resilience of a woman who had nothing left to prove to the ghosts of failure that once circled her name with sharpened intent beneath the burning ruins of a fortune that did not define her worth, but tested it fully at last. Years later, walking the edge of a calm harbor with Isabella beside her, Maya sometimes spoke of the ship, not as a monster, but as a teacher. It had shown her how quickly fate can overturn the known world, how wealth without courage is just another kind of debt, and how survival is rarely loud or glamorous. Survival is steady. It is signing when your hand shakes. It is keeping secrets until sunlight becomes your shield. It is choosing your child over fear every single day. The Lady Fortuna sank with her ghosts, but the lesson she carried did not. Sometimes the greatest inheritance is not money buried in darkness, but the strength revealed when darkness comes looking for you. Life will test you not with what it gives, but with what it dares you to protect. And the truest wealth is who you become when everything is at risk. Maya tightened her grip on Isabella's hand as gulls cried overhead, and evening settled soft and golden across the water that once held ruin and now held reflection. The harbor no longer felt like a graveyard but a threshold. And in that quiet space between loss and beginning, she understood at last that courage does not announce itself with fire or fury. It simply remains, steady as breath, waiting for the next moment when it must rise again and carry ordinary people across impossible bridges built from choice rather than chance alone.